First of all, Tatjana, congratulations for winning your awards, and thank you very much for taking part in the podcast. It means a lot to us because you're our first podcast, who isn't one of us three, so it's nice to meet you. Yes, I suppose we should say this is the White Deer International Film Festival podcast. It'll be number 4, and we've got Tatjana Anders with us. And we're saying your name right, aren't we?
Yeah.
Tatjana Anders. Great. I'm Mark Wisdom, one of the festival directors. We've got Al, another festival director. Somewhere in the background, we've got Adam, who is another festival director, and taking care of all the technology stuff. So, firstly, I guess it would be really nice for us to know just like how you got started as, what would you call yourself? An actor, writer? What's your main...
I'd say acting is my main profession. But I started writing actually this year. Was when I had the idea after reading lots of terrible scripts for auditions. I was like, I can do better. So I started writing, and I had a few interesting ideas. I've done sort of like a comedy sketch before, Your Reality. And then my partner and I, we were thinking about like brainstorming for ideas, and I quite like human psychology, and I think as an independent filmmaker, it's something that can be a very interesting plot without needing to have too much investment, and being able to do something in like 1-2 locations on a small budget, but still make it look really high quality. Like rather focus the money on a good cinematographer, and obviously on an interesting plot, rather than on special effects or whatever, trying to and use the money that you have wisely. So because obviously I wanted to make the film, I was like, I'm just gonna do it myself. So what we did is we started like a crowdfunding campaign on Indiegogo, and I was lucky enough as well that I had one bigger executive producer come on board, who invested a bit more. John Clarkson, he really helped me out. And and then I kind of like gathered the crew together. And DOP, I worked with him before on a few occasions, but the director, it was quite a funny story how he came on board. When I started writing the script, and I know it's not my strength, I mean, I like it, and I think it came out alright, but I was thinking it's a good idea to get as much feedback as possible and try and make it as good as possible. So I would attend these script writers meetups in London. There are quite a few of them, but this one I really particularly enjoyed, because what you would do is send in your script, and everyone sort of like who would attend that particular meetup would read it beforehand, and we'd meet up and they would give you feedback on the character, so we'd have like a moderator, and then we would sort of go around the table and everyone could contribute with their ideas. Usually they do a feature film script in that 1 hour, or in our case, because it was a short film, we did like 3 different short film scripts that we critiqued. And it was really helpful for me. In one way is that because it gave me more clarity on the things I had to tweak, but also one of the guys, he's like, who's going to be directing it? And I was like, well, I'm actually looking for a co-director or a director, because I don't really want to do it on my own. I think it's just going to be too much pressure for me. I want to be focusing on acting when I'm on set. And he's like, I like the script, I'll direct it. I was like, oh, sweet. And he turned out to be a really good director. He came in with his own ideas. His name is Tatjana Anders, and he's like, oh, I wanted to be like locked off shots, and I wanted to be quite stylized, with like interesting camera angles where you would, for example, see more of usually, you know, you set the camera that you have the face here, and then there's a lot of space in here. And, you know, if you're talking in this direction, for example, you'd be like, no, you'd be almost like talking off camera, kind of like creating this like weird scenarios where something's off already from the beginning. And we wanted for the audience to feel that, you know, I can't really put my finger on it, but I can feel that something's not quite right. So that's sort of like the whole of feeling we wanted to achieve throughout the film, obviously with the story as well as the cinematic tools that we had. Yeah.
Brilliant. Okay, that's very, very insightful. Wow.
Can I ask Tatjana, so what motivated you to sort of create this story? You know, what was the sort
I should just say, I think we forgot to introduce, it was Your Reality, which is the film that you wrote and obviously acted in. That's a film that we're mainly discussing today for any viewers that weren't aware. So
the plot of the story, for anyone who doesn't know, it's about gaslighting. And gaslighting is a type of psychological abuse or psychological manipulation, usually in a partnership, where someone tries to undermine your perception of reality. Like the easiest example would be if, you know, you go out with your boyfriend or girlfriend and you have a great time together, and the next morning they're like, oh, you embarrassed me in front of everyone, the way you behaved, you drank way too much, and you're like, what? It was fine, like, what are you even talking about? But they are so convincing, and they are just making you feel really guilty that you start doubting yourself. You're like, wow, maybe I have such a skewed perception of myself, and this person who I love and trust. And usually also what happens that they start off the relationship as very, very loving, and they do. I did so much research about the gaslighting. So they do something called love bombing, where they, you know, overwhelm you with their love in the beginning. And then so when it twists, when it shifts, you're so perplexed because this is so out of character for this person to be so mean to you. So you kind of like, you know, something must be wrong with me. Anyway, so we read an article about it in a magazine, and it reminded me of a story that happened to my friend. So a friend of mine, she had this boyfriend who would cheat on her, and when she started kind of like having her doubts, she would call him out on it, and he would always turn things around where he'd say, oh, you know, why are you having these thoughts? Maybe it's you who is cheating on me. Maybe, you know, why don't you trust me? Like, something must be wrong with you. Like, it's, I don't know. And it really, really confused her, and she struggled. She struggled. I think it's the worst kind of manipulation where you start doubting yourself, and it really affects your psyche. So when they broke up eventually, and I think it was, funny enough, even him who broke up, can you imagine? She found his old phone, and that he forgot about, and she switched it on, and there were like so many messages from so many people. I know, and she was completely shocked, and it really, really was a hard time for her, and she struggled to recover from it, and she struggled going into next relationships because she would always have trust issues. Luckily now she's all good. She found a really amazing guy. I'm really happy for her, and it took her about 3-4 years to recover from it, which is kind of like a shame, you know. It's most of the time it was like her late 20s, so it's the time where you should be having fun and you should be enjoying yourself and not being constant anxiety about some guy trying to, you know, make a fool of you. So and it really inspired me in a way that I wanted to tell the story, and I wanted to raise awareness of the issue more than anything, because I feel like there are lots of people in that same position out there, but the problem is that they don't really realize that they're in it. This is the whole problem, or this is why these manipulators get away with it, because they're so skilled with their manipulations that the person doesn't really realize what they're in, and usually they always blame themselves, and they feel really unhappy, and they have this gut feeling that something's off, because our body kind of never lies, but usually what we tend to do is kind of try and dismiss it and think logically, like, but it can't happen, this person, sort of try and rationalize these things. But I've had a few people, even after, watching your reality, telling me that either they've had these kind of relationships in the past, or they know a friend, or they're currently in one. And the amount of people who came forward to me and reached out, it's unbelievable, and it's almost scary. Like, I thought it would be a big problem, but I didn't think it would be that huge.
Yeah,
I think it
okay.
was...
That's it's definitely a story that's definitely transcended with people, and it's related to people, which is great to hear. Actually, I think it's probably what you want actually when you're putting a story together. You in some ways it could be, whether it's even if you're telling an action story, on some level it has to have appeal to the audience, and it seems that in this case it certainly has. I mean, we definitely felt it, and it sort of made us aware of some of the things that, even as a partner in a relationship, maybe we've done, which is so wrong for us to do, but it takes something to make us aware that might be happening, for example. So it's definitely I think it's definitely, for me, I can sort of relate in that sense. I guess one thing I want to maybe ask, and because obviously you did write this, did that make it easier for you to act in it as well? Did it help prepare the character for you, or was it maybe like the talking with your friend or research which helped? Was there a standout thing that really got you into character?
Yeah, it really, really helped writing it. It was like I hardly even had to prepare, even though for all the emotional scenes and all. I felt like reading about all these women's struggles, and read lots of books about it when I was doing my research, and I even spoke with a few therapists who specialize in this area. It really helped me, and I feel like as an actor I would always do research anyway, but it was never to that depth. And I feel like I should probably take this approach now to every role that I go to, because it felt like I knew the character so well, and it was really easy for me to relate to her. I am kind of a very emotional and empathetic person myself, so I was like, kind of, it could be me, because I always care about other people. I always try and put other people first, but it's these kind of people who usually get in these situations. Lucky for me, I've been spared. I have an amazing partner, but I could see, I could totally see it happening, with just the wrong person, the wrong time, in the wrong place, just meet some guy. And I've seen so many occasions. There was this case of an MP who opened up about it. I don't know if you've seen it. It's a video on YouTube, and she's a successful woman. She has money, she has friends, she has power, and nonetheless, she met this guy who would abuse her, and eventually she tried to get away from him, but it just shows that anyone can fall into it. You don't have to be insecure, really. usually it's when people are somehow insecure in, maybe you can be very, very confident in your job, but have insecurities in terms of relationships. So it's funny how, if you're a confident person, it doesn't always mean that you're immune to these kind of things.
Yeah, for sure.
Absolutely.
Yeah. I think, I mean, the sort of the lead character, the character you play yourself, she is kind of very relatable. And I think a lot of people will perhaps watch this and kind of feel, that they have been through these situations that at the time they weren't aware of. And I think having watched it, and I think it is credit to your delivery of the character, you really kind of get a true insight of how that manipulation kind of comes into the foreground, and how it throughout the film it was very subtle. It was like little digs here and there, and it was yeah. I mean, personally, I was very impressed with how it was hinted at throughout the story, right up until the end.
Yeah. Oh, thank you so much. I really appreciate it. The whole idea was that we wanted the audience to feel the same way as Alicia, the main character. We didn't want to give away, what's going to happen. In a way, I wanted to leave it open to whether Mark, the guy, is actually a good guy or whether he's a manipulator. I wanted, because this is the situation the person finds itself in. She thinks that it's her fault the whole time, kind of.
Yeah.
And that's what I wanted the audience to feel. I wanted for them to be on the same level, but then there is a final reveal where we find out the truth. But I think, the reason why hopefully she is relatable is that she is exactly in the same shoes as the audience at the moment, and I kind of wanted for the audience to feel like they've been gaslighted a little bit with a film where they like believed one thing and then another thing actually was the truth. So it's good that it came across. I'm really happy to hear that.
I think it definitely had the desired effects for sure.
Absolutely.
So yeah.
One of my best friends came to the screening, and she came later to me. She's like, I can't believe this guy treated you like this. And I mean, it's so funny because she's like, I know me so well, and it felt so real. For me, like, I was just kind of being myself in a way on the screen, and this guy just being, really mean. And she's like, oh, I had the urge to go and protect you. So sweet. Bless.
Was there anything, because obviously you mentioned before about the director coming in and wanted to do it very stylized and things like that. You've mentioned obviously your co-star, I think Mark, did you say? Was there input from either the director or Mark or any of your other co-stars which maybe made the film different or better even from just the script as it was? Any input which they brought to it which you could then use and take and put into the film to make it, to, I wouldn't say improve it necessarily, but to just make it more real or perhaps or something, or something like that.
I think both actually his name is Kyle James, so the character's name is Mark, but
yes
it's Kyle James.
Of course,
he was really good. He was sort of like getting into the role, and it's a really tricky role to play because you're kind of in a way he's playing a role in a film, so he can't really be true to himself in a way because he is manipulating and he knows that he is kind of like doing things the wrong way. So it's a very fine line between him just being himself and trying to kind of like put on a performance almost as the character, if that makes sense. It's very strange because what they do is they do over dramatize and they do try and like pull on your emotional strings. So I think for him it was an interesting role, and he did it really well, where he brought in this interpretation of kind of a sweet guy and really charming, but at the same time he had this meanness in him as well that he could channel. And in terms of the director, Tatjana, he did a brilliant job as well. I think that he brought in so many ideas. For example, he had this idea that we would meet beforehand and just rehearse the scenes. We did it, we didn't even have the location back then, but we just wanted to go through the motions and sort of try and understand and also work together. So it was the first time I worked with Kyle James, and just for us to get a feeling about how things work, and kind of like block it out a little bit. And throughout the film or the shooting time, Top would always sort of like pull me to the side and give me a few tweaks and ideas of how to play the character differently. So he was actively helping me to achieve the performance that I did, and the same with Kyle James, which was really, really useful. Yeah, I think it's so important to have, especially as sort of an up-and-coming actor, to have a director on board who understands actors and can direct actors, because not every director can. Some of them are really focused on the technical side and, like trying to get things right, and then they just let you do your thing, which is fine, but it's just a nice add-on if they have something to say to help you improve your performance. Yeah. No, it was really good.
Do you have anything? Because obviously, obviously in our little group, I'm an actor, so I completely relate to that. And Al's has been my director on many films, so it's good to, I think, from my point of view, to know that as from an actor to an actor, that is also appreciated, and it definitely helps you when you've got a director who can make changes in your performance in a way that doesn't hinder you or completely take you out of the preparation that you've already done, and it's just definitely something I think for some directors to potentially take on board, that we all want to get the best out of the work, and it's just about maybe relating the direction that you sort of want to take as a director and relating that to other people. And there's many different personalities on board, which you have to be conscious of. But if you can do that, or if you've got a willingness to do that as a director, then it always helps, doesn't it? And always makes the project come to life, even because it has that extra smoothness, I would say.
It's the power of collaboration. I think that is definitely the hands down the strongest thing about filmmaking is how in a collaborative project everyone brings their own unique thing, and it's having that trust in as part of a team, and so I mean it sounds like, based on what you've told us, Tatjana, that was very much what was going on. It was collaboration was at the forefront of what you were.
Absolutely. I was so happy with the people I brought on board. With Tatjana as well, I wanted to say I really liked his approach to critique. He would always be very positive. He would never be like, "Oh, it was shit," because then, as an actor, it really puts you down. Like, you have to be so sensitive, I think, with actors, where he's like, "Oh, it was amazing. Let's just try a little this and this," I think it's really important to know how to direct and how to critique people without putting them down. Because once they're like sulking, I think it's really hard to get anything out of them anyway. But I think as for the rest of the crew, I mean, the DOP had some really interesting ideas as well, in terms of camera angles. We had a really nice sort of collaboration. Also, I had art designer Charlotte Rebeck, who came on board, and she and the director, they had a meetup even without me. I think I was busy on a project where they decided on, for example, how does Mark's apartment look like? So is it quite, what kind of person is he? Is he, quite sterile, quite sort of like, emotionless when he is himself? And we kind of wanted his apartment to reflect that. So it doesn't really have any overflux of like, it's got his photographs on there because he's a photographer, and obviously he loves himself and he wants everyone to see his amazing work. But apart from that, it's quite bare. And it's only like, when Alicia moves in and we have the bedroom scene, for example, where we see her side of the bed and his side of the bed, and hers is sort of like has lots of like photos and things, and whereas his is like completely bare. So it's an interesting choice in terms of art design as well. And it's nice to have people. I didn't really even have anything to do with it. It's like I just gave them the script and I gave them the idea, and they took it to the next level, which is exactly what you're saying, about the collaboration and the power of it, where people understand the script and understand the project and they contribute with their own ideas, and that's amazing. Brilliant. Where I can just take my hands off them because I trust the people who are in charge that they will do a brilliant job.
Trust is such an important word, I think, and it's also if you let people do their job, especially when it's a project so close to you because you've written it and it means a lot to you, then I guess it shows your own confidence in them, that you've trusted them to come in and to help you tell this story, which always helps the collaboration side if there is that trust on both sides, and that we're all working together towards the same goal, and let's achieve it in the best way possible. So that it's all amazing to hear, and I think it shows why you did so successful at our previous award season, because it just shows the collaborative nature, the connected nature. But I guess obviously it doesn't stop here. So what's next for you? I mean, you're going to work with the team again, the same team. Have you got another story that you want to tell? Because it'd be great. Obviously, it's done so well previously. The stories that you want to tell. Have you got another one on that you want to work on? Or
I've actually we've done another like super short film with the same director and the DOP just last month. It's super short. It's like under 5 minutes. It was actually for a competition. That's why we had a time restriction. But also, I am currently working on a feature film version of Your Reality.
Brilliant.
So this time I brought on board a co-writer. Nick Zabriak. Oh God, I hope I pronounced his last name right. I really need to like cross-check with him. But he is really brilliant as well. He's quite a young writer, but he's already won an award for one of his scripts, which is really nice. And we work in a way that we kind of based obviously the story around the short film, but when we started developing it, we had to change quite a few things. One, because I just don't really want to repeat myself. I mean, I kept the names, but the circumstances, the way, for example, the couple meets are different. We add in more characters, and we make... This is the beauty of a feature film, where you can create a more complex world around them, because obviously we really had to strip it down for the short film. We just don't have time to introduce more characters. Whereas in a feature film, you get to meet maybe people from Alicia's workplace. Same with Mark. Maybe you get to meet the family. You get to understand more of like the reason why Mark turned the way he is. You get to understand what happens after Alicia finds out that he's been treating her badly and maybe been gaslighting her, because I think that's one of the biggest aspects I wanted to explore with a feature film. Lots of people do know that something's off with their relationship, but it's like, what do they do with that information? because a lot of times, A, there is hope that they can change the person. B, where emotions are involved, it's very hard to think logically and rationally, and it's very hard to just walk away from a person that you like and love and maybe have built a future with. Maybe you have a kid, maybe you live in the same house. It's always, maybe, you know, you work together. I don't know, like, it's always more complicated than just leave, you know what I mean? Life isn't as simple. So I wanted to create a more complex world and have a resolution, sort of like, you know, started with them meeting to all the different stages that their relationship goes through to a resolution of how is it going to end. Are they going to stay together? Is he going to change? Or does she have to leave him and, you know, sort of their relationship falls apart? So I think these are the questions that are quite important for me and I want to answer. And I think that hopefully that is going to be even more helpful for people who are in an abusive relationship, who are hopefully going to watch the film to relate to and understand sort of towards their own situation, and hopefully help them kind of at least open their eyes and start looking into the subject. Obviously, you know, you can't answer everything, but I think if it makes people think and it makes people, and there's a lot of information online, like I found there are like support groups and like all sorts of like help websites and amazing books, but if you're not aware of it, you won't be looking out for them. So yeah, I'm really, really excited. So we are about on Act 2, end of Act 2 now, in terms of the writing. But I'd probably say there's going to be a few rewrites, as there always are, because this is just draft 1. And I'm hopefully gonna try and film it next year. That's my goal.
Brilliant. Yeah.
Let's see if it happens. I know with feature films it does take longer than with short films, but you gotta set yourself ambitious goals, right?
Exactly. Go for the challenge.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah. I've got a couple more questions for you, Tatjana, if you don't mind.
Yeah, sure.
The first one would be, what do you feel like you've learnt from being part of your reality? You know, if you were going to sort of pick out a couple of things that you've learned from a filmmaking point of view, I'd say, or as an actress.
Loads of things. I think pick your team really, really wisely. I would always try and go through recommendations. And you know what? As being an actor, I was always like annoyed about that because you're like, oh man, you work with these people, like give other people a chance, kind of a thing. But I understand why they do it. It's so important when you know that you can, as you say, like trust the person and know that they will be fine on set and then they deliver the goods. You're just more likely to work with them again. And that also, you know, if you flip it around from a person who does work on set, you know, always try and put your best foot forward because people have more projects, you know what I mean? You don't want to upset anyone on set. Just my view. I think raising investment was a very interesting point as well, because this is a big question for every independent filmmaker out there. I think crowdfunding was really, really hard, and it probably for a short film it still is a good thing to do, and I know a few people who've done really, really well with it, but you have to harass so many people. So many friends, and try and push it out there. We tried to reach out to press and be like, hey, you know, this is like a really interesting idea and would you like to write about it? They're like, we like the subject, but we don't really want to write about the crowdfunding campaign. I'm like, okay. So it was very much sort of like heavy lifting from myself, and some of the team kind of helped me spread the word, which was really nice as well. But I don't think I would have been able to produce a film if I didn't have one major investor come on board, unless of course you can sort of like pull in a few strings and get a few favors. But it depends. I think you can do a few things for free, maybe for 1 day or two. When it becomes like 3-4 day shoot, which is what we had, I think it's very hard to get freebies because people invest their time. And unless, you know, you're already like an award-winning director or actor, etc., then people obviously will do it for their show reel. But regardless to that, it's always nicer to pay the people you work with, even if it's, you know, minimal. But it's just, I think it's just fair. And I think as well, applying to festivals, I think is quite good. It's just I applied to quite a few, maybe like 30, and it can get quite expensive. You guys, it was alright, but some of them you're like, bloody hell.
Oh yes, yep.
The bigger ones, obviously, they you know, they charge like 70, 80, like whatever pounds, and you're like, bloody, you know, like run out of budget with one application. But I think it's important because it gives you credibility, and it's obviously, it's hard to quantify it because you never know whether this particular award or this particular nomination will result in anything bigger, but I think it just shows recognition, and it helps people, even if they haven't seen the short film, to kind of, it gives them more trust that you know what you're doing as a filmmaker. So I think it is important to put it out there. And the thing is, I think the mistake that most filmmakers make is that they produce the film and, you know, they kind of maybe do a screening and that's it. And I think that it's a shame, because if you don't put it out there, no one's going to do it and no one's going to see it. And if you consider all the work that you put into creating a film, from like writing the script, from, you know, raising the investment, from shooting, from editing, you know, it takes months, sometimes years with feature films, and it's just a shame if you don't take it all the way, because marketing and getting it out there is part of the filmmaking process, but because it's the business side of things, people always get freaked out and they kind of just like, oh, no, I'm just going to go and jump back into a different project. I think that's a big mistake. I think you should try and milk it. You know, you've earned it, kind of a thing. You should just try and get it out there and try and pitch it to different areas and places, and try and get some publicity for it. So I think that would be an advice that I would give to independent filmmakers, because I see so many people do it wrong, or at least not, you know, taking full advantage of what they could have done.
Brilliant. Okay.
And as an actress, what would your, like, for somebody who is just starting out as an actress, what would your advice be to them to sort of, you know, build their career, build their show reel? You know, what would you advise as an actress yourself?
Yeah, would you suggest them to create their own work? For example, if in your case you read a lot of scripts where you just weren't doing anything for you, would it be that to say, well, if you're not happy, do your own stuff?
Absolutely. I think, you know, for me it was, I think, lucky that I can do a few things. I can edit, and I can I love even sort of photography, and I love being behind like, it interests me to understand the, you know, how the camera works, etc., etc. But even if it's not your strength, I think you can always be the driving force behind a project. There are so many writers out there that, you know, would die to get their work done, because, you know, all they do is write and then they kind of just move on to the next project. So I think if you just, you know, have an idea, you can find a writer, you could, you know, work on a script together, you can find like people. It's all about just getting out there and emailing people or meeting them at events and trying to create things together. I think it's so important. For me personally as well, I've never went to drama school, but I have been doing acting classes. I have like a brilliant acting coach, and we do one-to-one classes and workshops pretty much every week. Even still, you know, I always try and learn something new. I feel like you should always keep working on your craft, and for me, I think I've been doing it for like 4 or 5 years, and I feel like this year was the year where I finally found myself in acting. Before that, I did try to do like a few things here and there in terms of even myself, but I don't think I was actually ready as an actor, which, you know, it's like when it happens, it needs to be like the right time. And for me, I hope it feels like it's the right time for me to be doing these kind of things, because obviously I don't want to put anyone off from like making their own work, but if you're not ready and you're gonna do it, it's just also wasted time, I think, as well, because if you just started off and you don't actually know how to act and how to prepare, and you know, and I had my acting coach, even though I've written the script and I know the like role upside down, I still went to him and we kind of like, he gave me some interesting ideas of like, oh, think about this when you say that. Just sort of like to give the character even more depth and maybe like an interesting angle. I don't always take everything on board what he says or, you know, other people suggest me, but I love hearing their ideas, because sometimes there's some, you know, like, this is nice, and maybe I can use that, or maybe I can have, it's nice to have different inputs, I think. So yeah, I think as an actor, you know, definitely do your work, create your stuff, but make sure you're ready for it, and make sure to get help if you feel like you're not there yet. Even, you know, if you have a character, get someone, a friend or another actor on board to give you some critique if you're not sure if you're doing that role right or not, in a way. But some people, you know, they've never done any acting and they come on set and it's just perfect. I don't know, like sometimes if you tap into, I guess this is the beauty of writing a character yourself. You always tend to write it someone who you can relate to, I think. If you don't do it, then you're stupid. Because why wouldn't you do that? You know what I mean? Like, and then it's just so much easier to tap into anyway. Yeah, no, it's been really helpful, and I feel like it really helped my acting career. And now, A, I feel more confident as an actor, and B, I feel like once you've done your first project, it feels like it opens a whole new box, you know, Pandora box of possibilities, where you're like, yeah, I can do a feature film. Maybe I'll do like a TV series or a web series next. I don't know, like, there's nothing stopping me. You know, I don't have to wait for anyone anymore to hire me. I mean, obviously I still go to auditions, but like if I don't get any, I'll just do my own stuff. So
the possibilities are endless.
Exactly. And I think it takes away the anxiety that most actors have. I'm sure, Mark, you can like relate to that, because you're so at mercy of everyone else as an actor, where you're like, oh, hopefully they'll hire me, and I'm in the same shoes as well. When I go to auditions, I'm like, oh, please, you know, I really want this role, but it's never in, you know, you never have the final say unless you're like Scarlett Johansson or something.
True.
So,
yeah. It's nice to have I think it's kind of the crude way of putting it, but a bit of power in a project almost, or a bit of a say, whereby or some sort of influence to it, because if you can devote more to it in any way possible, it means that you can give more to the project, give more to the characterization, and you know, I just like to echo your words that there are more ways into this industry than just going to drama school and just doing it the very traditional way. Not to take anything away from that route, but you learn so much on a film set. You learn so much just by being around people in in the industry already, and there are just different ways of getting in and different ways of exploring it and getting the most out of it. And as long as you keep working hard and keep pushing yourself to do better, you can really do some great things, which you clearly have already. But I'm afraid we are running very, very quickly out of time. Are there any final words that you would like to share with us, or with anyone that might be listening, just to give encouragement to them perhaps, or anything at all? And then we'll have to wrap up there. But yeah, is there anything you'd like to share?
Yeah, I just want to say a big thank you to you guys for doing the interview. It's really lovely to meet you and to talk to you, and brilliant questions as well. And I think to everyone who's listening out there, go out and create stories, but make sure they're stories you're passionate about and that you really want to tell. I think that's sort of the biggest mistake that big networks are doing. They're like, oh, what is popular, what are the numbers? Let's do the numbers game. And then you get lots of either films that are exactly the same, or something that just doesn't quite feel right, and you're like, I've seen it so many times. So I think don't be afraid to be bold, to be different, and write stories or create stories that you feel like are quite quirky and are are like you need to like it. That's the most important thing. So yeah, that's my final words.
Well, I think we've been almost blown away by how insightful that really has been, and thank you so much for sharing, really quite honestly, the methods that you went through to create your reality, and I hope you have all the best of luck for the future. And yeah, how can people follow you and keep up to date on how things are going with you?
Yeah, I mean, Your Reality Film is just at Your Reality Film on Twitter, Instagram and Facebook, and for myself it's Tatjana.Anders on Instagram.
Brilliant.
Yeah, that's it.
Okay, well, people check out Tatjana's work. It's fantastic, and it's already fantastic, and I'm sure it'll be brilliant in the future. Yeah, thank you very much. Make sure to just final things is the mandatory things you have to do, I think. So yes, you can listen to this if you are not listening to it already, either on our website, the White Deer International Film Festival website. Just put it into Google and you'll find it quite quickly. There'll be announcements out about it on Instagram, Facebook, Twitter, all the usual places. Of course, we're also on other podcast channels if you're listening to it elsewhere. Yeah, if we're on YouTube, like, subscribe, do all the things, click the notifications. But yeah, thank you so much, Tatjana. Once again, it has been an absolute pleasure speaking to you, and we couldn't have had a better first guest on the show. Any final things, Al, or...?
No, I think that's
it, yeah. Thank you so much once again. And yeah, hope to stay in touch and keep up to date with how things are going.
Yes, I will. Thank you guys. Have a lovely day.
You too. Thanks, Tatjana.
Thanks, Tatjana.
Bye. Bye.